sensuous lines and subtle light, feminine figures and whiplash hair, vegetable curves and willow leaves, twisting waves, and evanescent smoke, but also by control lines and geometric details. Art Nouveau, a movement inspired by Japanese art. Japanism was an immense inspiration for the Art Nouveau movement. Japanism's functionality and beauty emboldened the everyday objects aesthetics, which captivated the European designers in the late 19th century. In a resounding attempt to create new contemporary art, the Art Nouveau movement lasted from 1885 to 1914. Emerging from the Industrial Revolution and branching out from the arts and crafts movement as a mixture, Art Nouveau moved to the idea of total art, including architecture, interior design, graphic arts, furniture, glass art, jewelry, metalwork, posters, and textiles. Art Nouveau is known for its resounding emphasis on lines with illustration, floral and geometric design in many parts of the world. Jugendstil in Germany, style liberty in Italy, modernismo in Spain, and modern style in English. Art Nouveau is known for its whiplash lines, flower motifs, and decoration, and is indebted to Japanese arts. To understand the sudden interest of the West in Japanese arts, we also have to understand Japan's isolation from the rest of the world for over 200 years, and why. This 200-year period fell at the end of the Edo period, or otherwise known as the Tokugawa era. Marco Polo had made Japan known as the land of pearls and gold, which motivated the world to get to this land. The first Westerns to make contact were the Portuguese in 1543, introducing religion, matchlock arms in Japan's most challenging times, known as the Sengoku Jidai. The Sengoku Jidai was known as a period in Japan as a near constant civil war which collapsed the feudal system in Japan. William Adams, an English navigator who sailed with the Dutch fleet, landed in Japan. These were Protestant vessels. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the founder of the first shogun in Japan, was interested in William Adams' descriptions, ideology, and religions of the outside world from Japan. Ieyasu welcomed the trade with the Dutch. This provided Japan with the means of firearms, commercial profits, and general information. William Adams then was naturalized and was perhaps the most famous foreign samurai. By 1612, however, diplomatic incidents had convinced Ieyasu that the missionaries were a threat to the political order that he had so laboriously constructed. In the next 2 years, Ieyasu took the necessary steps to stop missionary activity and discourage their religious practice. By 1641, foreigners could not make a profit, and most left only tolerated the Dutch and maintained trade with them through the 200 years of isolation. European books were forbidden, but by the early 18th century, Dutch books restrictions were lifted. This was called the Rangaku, or Dutch learning. Japanese intellectuals became obsessed with Western exploration. Much of Japan's art during this period portrayed current events from around the world, learned from these books. Finally, the 1853 Matthew Perry's expedition to increase economic advances for the United States threatens Japan's 200-year isolation, with the United States demanding that Japan open its borders. The Treaty of Kanagawa on March 31, 1854, Japan opened its borders to the United States, which eventually extended to the Western countries later that same year. Dissemination of Japanese art occurred shortly after 1850 by French art dealers such as Tessel l'Empire Genoise, Rue Vivienne, and Monsieur de Soye. Monsieur de Soye was a businessman who often traveled to Japan. Madame de Soye became known as the first woman importer of Japanese art in the 19th century, Paris, after her husband's death. The Japanism term is generally said to have originated by the French critic Philippe Bourti in the early 1870s to describe the craze for Japanese art and design in the West. Tate Japanese art term. Impressionists influenced by Japanese art were Edgar Degas, which often placed his subjects in asymmetrical and diagonal positions as shown in the tub, with flat shapes and patterns shaping the back of the bather. Claude Monet, an admirer of Hakusai, with a portrait of his wife Camille Claudet in Japanese costume. James Tissot and Toulouse-Lautrec, known for his bold, flat, and full of movement lithographic prints. Mary Cassatt and her dry point, the letter, shown in a flat composition in bold colors, as well as Vincent van Gogh with his 1887 painting Flowering Plum Tree Bridge in the Rain after Hiroshige and the Courtesan after Eisen. Western artists became fascinated with the Japanese art for the use of flat, vivid colors, curved lines, and the use of black outline, cut-off compositions, and the use of asymmetry in flat space. This interest took root in Paris and became an artistic phenomenon, East meets West. In a time where Western artists were rebelling against the Art Academy, Japanism became a source of cultural and artistic inspiration for the West. In the center of the Western fascination with Japanese art were ukiyo-e, also known as Japanese woodblock prints. Ukiyo-e, a Buddhist term meaning the sad one or a pun on the floating world, also ukiyo, referred to the entertainment districts in major cities such as Edo, today Tokyo, and later referred to the entire world of urban fashion and pleasure. The subjects in ukiyo art were and not limited to popular kabuki actors, courtesans, prostitutes, warriors, and sumo wrestlers. Some of the ukiyo creators were Tori Kiyonaga, mostly known for its beautiful women. Kitagawa Utamaru, considered the master Japanese printmaker and painter, known for elongated figures of beautiful women, the use of metallics in his prints, close-up, and portraiture. Utagawa Hiroshige, where his subjects were not typical of ukiyo-e genre, but landscapes. Utagawa Kuniyoshi, also from the Utagawa school, most of his subjects included samurai and cats. And Hokusai, Under the Wave, also known as Great Wave, from the series 36 Views of Mount Fuji. In about 1680, book publishers began to make single-sheet prints, and in 1765 came full-color printing. In 1905, woodblock prints are replaced by photographs, postcards, etc. But in the 1910s, they are revived as a fine art form that continues until today. As a reaction against the Art Academy, a new era, a new artistic expression emerged, Art Nouveau, new art in French. This international movement toured much of Europe and a small part of the United States. This movement acquired its name after La Maison Bing, a gallery best known as the Art Nouveau, owned by Siegfried Bing, a Japanese art collector and dealer. This new artistic style included fine arts, applied arts, and interior decoration, and represented the original concept of the total work of art, harmoniously aimed to the abolition of the ranks of value between the different types of arts. In this gallery, Le Art Nouveau, Maison Bing, he then exhibited and sold contemporary works, furniture, glassware, ceramics, jewelry, such as glassworks of Tiffany or ceramics and jewelry of Henry van Velde. Bing's mission was to exhibit the applied and decorative arts and played an important role in diffusion of the Asian art among Art Nouveau artists such as Louis Comfort Tiffany, an American designer known for his stained glass works, Toulouse-Lautrec, Henry van de Velde, a Belgian artist mostly known for his furniture design but also poster design, Theo van Rysselbergh, Felix Voloton, inspired by Hakusai prints and developed modern woodcut, and finally Edward Vollard, whose subjects were blended into colors and patterns as those of Japanese art. The art rebellion for original and modern scattered all over the West and against the long-established fine arts institutions. The Vienna Secession building by Joseph Maria Ulbricht An architectural manifesto was established by a group of rebel artists called the Vienna Secession. On the front of this building, the motto reads, "To every age its art, to every art its freedom," a phrase that reasonably represents the desire for a new art form. Gustav Klimt was a member of the Vienna Secession, and on his painting Athena, we can observe how very quickly he moved into Art Nouveau. In his works, he demonstrates a blurred line between fine art and applied art, even on the embossed frame, and on how the gold is applied very heavily. Klimt demonstrates sensual, also typical of the movement, such as Athena. Klimt pushes flatness, three-dimensional, as well as sensuality. Some of his similar works are The Kiss and the portrait of Adele Bauer. Finally, a well-known artist of this movement is Alfons Mucha, a Czech painter, illustrator, and designer. His success with poster design began with the poster of Sarah Bernhardt, a popular French stage actress, as Gismonda, in 1895. This was such a success due to its fine detail and muted pastel colors in contrast of the bright colors used in posters at that time. Its narrow life-size compositions were influenced by the Japanese scroll format, according to Tomoko Sato, a curator of the Mucha Foundation. Mucha was later commissioned to design advertising posters from companies like Hub Cigarettes Paper, Chocolat Ideal, and Moet Chandon. His panels, The Four Seasons, Innocent Spring, Sultry Summer, Fruitful Autumn, and Frosty Winter, was produced on a color lithograph inspired by the Japanese woodcut decorative style. Today, Alfons Mucha is an influence on Japanese manga and anime. Specific and straightforward strokes, delicate linear simplicity, elongated figure lines, believe expressive property, color lines, organic and abstract, saturated colors, rhythmic in movement, posters, geometric figures, floral motifs, feminine. Japanisme was a great influence on the Art Nouveau movement, even though the demand for Japan to reopen to the West was finally achieved in the early 1950s. Its art was not yet distinguished in Europe until the movement towards a functional expression. Then it is when Japanese art was recognized and even given its own name, Japonism. Detail embellishment, catapult the Art Nouveau movement.